All right. So if I asked you what your Fidelity checklist tracks in your supervision, you could probably list for me from memory. If I asked you how your RBT was feeling during that same session, most of us would have no idea. The fix is a one-word check-in that fits inside the breaks that your session already has. No new pauses, no extra time, just a word logged like data. I've also written this up for you on a blog. If you'd rather read it, the link is below, so check that out too. But in this video, I want to go further than the write-up on the blog does and show you what this actually looks like running on a real team. The exact phrasing, the objections that could be heard, and what to do with the data once you've got it. So the fast version here, RBT burnout shows up as a slow drift, not a single event. And by the time burnout is obvious, it's way too late, right? Way too late to do anything about it. So the fix isn't a new pause in the session. It's using a break that already exists, like a reinforcement interval or a transition between programs, to grab one simple word from your supervisee, whether it be energized, steady, flat, frustrated, overwhelmed, checked out. Log it on a Fidelity checklist that you already use. That's the whole mechanism, y'all. The blog goes a little bit deeper as to why this belongs in ABA's data model in the first place. Here on this video, I just want to focus on how it actually runs. But before I get into how it actually runs day to day, I want to be upfront that I did not invent this out of nowhere. It came directly out of health coaching research. There is a body of work on integrating the mind and the body processes like motivational interviewing in health coaching. Programs like the one built at Vanderbilt that pair brief embodied check-ins with the coaching conversation itself, rather than just diving straight into the goals and action steps. The findings, in short, in this article is that pausing to notice how someone's feeling in their body before we ask them to change anything changes how the whole conversation goes. That's the actual origin of this idea of the one word. And set it out to invest in a check-in system for ABA supervision. I read this in research, recognized that we have some of the same gaps that exist in our field, and let's solve for one thing that health coaching doesn't have to deal with. There's no natural pauses in the middle of an ABA session, the way that there is in a coaching conversation. So where this is helpful in that coaching conversation and you have this, often one-on-one conversation where there is the space to ask these questions, think about in that busy context of your ABA session with your RBT supervisee. Things are so busy. Things are, constantly moving. Your client is constantly needing things, or, your RBT is constantly managing the environment and the session to keep things on track. So there's no place in these busy sessions to build in extra time to reflect like this. So everything in a recap, attaching this check-in to an existing break, keeping it to one simple word. It's an adaptation to a problem that we're having with detachment from our mind and body in our supervisions. That's where this idea is coming from. So when I say that this is worth trying, something to add to your supervision practice, I'm not suggesting this as like a hunch. Oh, try it and let's see how it works. The research is saying that it's there, that this can be a helpful tool in the context of a relationship, especially when we're asking for behavior change, which in supervision of our RBTs, we are asking for some sort of change in their behavior. So taking that research and applying it to a setting that it wasn't necessarily built for, but it's a stretch and it can work. So here's where I want to spend a little bit more time in this video. Picture a fairly typical ABA session. Your RBT is running discrete trials. The client earns a break with a preferred toy. And for those 15 or 20 seconds, the client is occupied and not looking at either you or your RBT. So that's it. That is a window to optimize. As the BCBA, you don't have to say something like, let's check in. You can just lean over and say one simple thing. Where are you at? And your RBT can give you that one simple word, flat, steady, or whatever's true for them. Write it down as a supervisor. And there we go. That's it. That's the whole process. The break ends, the RBT goes back, the client goes back, they're doing their thing. Session continues exactly as it was going to anyways. You just optimized a break. That's it. No extra built-in time minutes into that schedule, no separate meetings, no signal to the client that anything has even happened. The entire exchange takes less than checking a data sheet. Here's a small thing, but it matters. You want to keep the question identical every time. So one word, where you at? Not how's it going? Or you doing okay today? One open-ended questions invite open-ended answers, right? And open-ended answers take time that you don't have in a window like that. There's a time and a place for that, but in this simple interaction, that's not it. So the whole point of a word bank, maybe, is that everyone on your team, your RBT, and you already know the options that they have before the question's even asked. That way the answer becomes more instant. So put together a couple of words that you think might be most applicable. And as you talk about just talk about this with your RBT, you want to say it the exact same way, whether the answer last time was energized or overwhelmed. Have your same SD, right? If your tone changes based on what you're expecting to hear, the RBT is going to pick up on that, and you'll start getting answers that they think you want instead of what's true. So you really have to be careful about or be mindful about how you're setting up using a system like this as a space for the RBT, and your check-in is getting feedback from them as to in that moment, but you don't talk about it then, you talk about it later. So a few things that, thoughts that could be pushed back on. Well, won't my RBTs feel like they're being surveyed? Well, maybe if you introduce this as a monitoring tool, but if you, again, introduce it as something that you're doing for them, it's a way that their state actually gets tracked instead of ignored until it's a crisis. You are showing them in that moment that you care about them and care about what's going on for them without them having to talk a lot about it or really dig into it. So you want to frame it as the thing that makes it more likely that someone notices before they burn out, not less likely or like they're going to get in trouble. This is purely informational. Well, another thought that you may have questions about, what if someone just says fine every time to avoid the conversation? This right here is useful information too. Like a flat line with zero variation over months, that's its own signal, right? Especially for someone whose caseload or life circumstances that you know have changed or happen to be stressful in any way. You're not just watching for the negative words that come up, you're looking for patterns in the data of what these words are that are being reported to you. Another thought you might have, well, what do I do when someone says overwhelmed? Well, we hold on to it like data. We don't intervene in the moment. That's the whole reason that this works. It doesn't disrupt the flow of the session. You're going to note it, and it's going to become part of what you bring to the actual supervision meetings later on that week or whenever you can touch base with them at another time. If overwhelmed shows up repeatedly, maybe in a few weeks span, it's not a single word problem anymore. It's an agenda item. So really use these words, this data collection as data like we do everywhere else in our field. We're just asking for our RBTs to give that input report data. So here, this is the piece now that I didn't want to go deep into writing in the blog because it's easier to show you than to describe. Once you've got a few weeks of this data, don't look at it as a single entry. We're going to look at the shape of the trend over the caseload, over the time of the day, over the specific client pairing. A once a month overwhelmed is just noise, but 3 in a row or a pattern that always shows up on the same difficult case can be a signal to us. So when you spot a signal, bring it to your supervision time, bring it to your meeting as a starting point, not an accusation, just simply that reflection. Hey, I noticed that overwhelm has come up for you a few times this month, and I'm noticing maybe more on Thursdays that we're seeing this trend. What's going on here? It's a different conversation than the generic conversation might be of how you holding up, because you're walking in with something concrete instead of hoping that they're going to volunteer the information. So, how does this sound? It's an idea that gives you a different way of being in relationship with your RBTs that shows them that you care and you care about their mental health and preventing burnout for them in this high burnout field. So, if you want full reasoning for why this belongs in ABA's data model in the first place, go check out that blog, see the resource, take a look at that resource even deeper. And if you want somewhere that can actually be an easy place for you to log this data, these words in every session, check out the Elevate RBT Supervision Tracker free on my website for exactly that place to house this information. You'll see that link below too. So I challenge you, try this with one of your supervisees this week before rolling it out wider. Give it a try and let me know what happens. Let me know in the comments what's in your word bank. I'm going to read all these comments, and if you shoot me an email, I'm going to read all those too. So give me your feedback. I am interested in hearing it, and take this away. Use this as an effort to put forth to a powerful stand of being a strong supervisor, a proactive supervisor for your supervisees. This is a high burnout field. Anything we can do to combat that is worth trying. Check it out.